Murder and Such contains true stories about murders, the macabre, true crime, serial killers, and other dark subject matter. This includes adult themes, explicit language, descriptions of gore, violence, and other information provided by news articles, witness testimony, and public record. Murder and Such is not intended for all audiences, and although warnings will be set in place, listener discretion is still advised.
Hello, all of you lovely people, and welcome back to another episode of Murder and Such. My name is Hunter. Now, when it comes to the Patreon shoutouts for this episode, I have one person who I want to thank, and that is Cassandra Colon for jumping from the $1 per episode to the executive producer tier at $5 per episode. Whatever compels you to think the episode is actually worth that much, I'll have no idea. But thank you so much for your support, Cassandra. I know you've been listening to the show for a long-ass time, so thank you. And if you think that the show is worth $1 or $2, you can join the Patreon at patreon.com/murderandsuch and get the show for just $1 or become an executive producer at $5 per episode. Also, I would be reading off the Apple Podcast reviews, but I've made the conscious decision that if I was going to read off all the reviews that I've gotten in the since the last episode, it would be probably like a 30-minute monologue. So I'm actually going to be pushing the review reads to after the end of the episode, in which I actually stole the idea from a friend and podcaster, Justin Rimmel from Mysterious Circumstance Podcast. You should definitely go to Apple Podcasts, leave him a 5-star review. He's a solid dude. But yes, reviews will be at the end of the episode. If you want to listen to them, I'm probably going to get real personal with that. But if not, I thank you for being here. I thank Cassandra for her lovely donation to the show. Without further ado, let's get into this one. Before I start off this episode with my little monologue, I'm going to do something different. As you know, the name of the show is Murder and Such. Well, the last time I covered a case that didn't involve an actual murder has been, almost 30 episodes ago when I started my 2-part series on Tim Lambesis. So guess what? I'm doing more of an And Such episode this time, but I swear to you that it's still going to be an incredibly deep dive into a case, and while nobody was murdered in the process, it does surround the topic of death. So if that doesn't suit you, then I completely understand, and maybe the next episode will have a murder, but hey, I'm going to be doing a palate cleanser for this episode. My therapist said it would be a good idea, so here's a little musical interlude for you to close out of your app or this episode if you want to. If you're still here, then thank you. Let's start getting in this episode a little bit more. A lot of us have the question that surrounds what happens after we die. Is there a heaven or a hell? Is there an afterlife or reincarnation? Do we all burn in a lake of fire because we wore a cotton polyester blended shirt? Or do we just die and that's it? That's the question that none of us amongst the living have ever found the answer to. But one thing is for sure, when your brain stops functioning, your heart stops beating, and your body ceases to move on its own accord, you're going to leave your remains behind. Considering the fact that we are all organic matter, most of the soft tissue, cartilage, meat, and organs we have will degrade, break down, and rot away faster than, say, our hair or our bones. The soft fatty tissue becomes a feast for maggots and worms, thus preserving the circle of life. I really don't give a shit what happens with my bones or remains. Whether I'm cremated or tossed in an alleyway behind Speedway on Smithville, I guarantee you that I'll be too damn dead to really give a shit about what happens to my body. Hell, to be honest, I'm an organ donor, but some of my organs are pure 100% shit. My lungs have years and years of cigarette tar built into them. I also had tuberculosis back in 2007, and my pancreas is a punk-ass bitch who doesn't want to work anymore, and my brain is as smooth as an ice skating rink. Maybe my body would be an excellent case study for what happens when you're a depressive, overweight guy in his 30s who smokes a pack a day, is diabetic, had tuberculosis, and spends his days and weeks researching true crime. Of course, I'm projecting the life that I live is even remotely interesting. But a lot of things happen when our blood stops pumping. The vast majority on a biological level is really just smelly, stinky, and nothing more than decomposition. Yet that's not to say that it's not interesting, to say the very least. Like, quick question. Are you familiar with the Body Farm out of Knoxville, Tennessee? No? Well, the real name is the University of Tennessee Forensic Anthropological Research Facility. But still, it's a body farm. The facility is extremely interesting, however. Each year, they receive about 100 new donations of cadavers, and as of right now, they estimate that they have well over 1,800 bodies on site. It was started in 1981 after the first body was donated to the center, but they use different means of watching the bodies decompose to help with forensic pathology. They've got bodies that are submerged in water, put inside of cars and submerged in water, and they've got bodies in different areas of exposure, and they use the information that they find to help forensic case studies that can show what happens to a body when it dies and it's left in unusual areas. They even state that on their website that the first body that they received still in research studies to this day. So to me, that sounds like having a pretty significant life after death. But after I read all of that, how does it sit in your stomach? Do you think that a body farm full of human remains is downright disgusting? Or are you a weirdo like me who likes dead shit and think that it's a truly fascinating dive into morbid curiosity? Yeah, I'm a weirdo who likes dead stuff. Whether it's wet specimens or dry remains from animals, I think it's very, very interesting, to say the very least. Hell, last week a friend and listener of the show named Stephanie Schmidt, who lives back home in my hometown, found some deer bones in a ditch and grabbed a jawbone from it. Yes, the deer had been picked clean of all meat and tendons, but I asked her if she would go back and grab more of it and have it shipped to me so I can create something. I'm weird, I like that kind of stuff, so thank you again, Stephanie. But that's animal bones. As a species, most of us generally think of humans as superior to animals. I've already got animal bones here, and I'm always willing to accept more. So, for real, send me all of the spooky shit. And also, if you want to see one that I'm currently working on, you can check out my TikTok, because I actually made a video. The TikTok is @murderandsuch, and I'm working on a raccoon right now that was ethically sourced a few years ago, and no, it's not Jeff. So don't worry about that guy. But anyways, bones. What happens when the cemeteries fill up and there's nowhere to put our flesh bags and walking sticks? What happens with our skulls, our ribs, femurs, and teeth? What would it be like to find out that your loved one's bones have been salvaged and now they're traveling across the country to be used in some sort of an online trade or possible black magic? That's what we're going to be discussing on this episode. But as always, my name is Hunter, and you're listening to Murder and Such, and this is episode 83, The Holt Cemetery Incident, otherwise known as Bone-Ghazi. For this episode, we're heading down to the beautiful city of New Orleans, Louisiana. Back in 1879, a 7-acre area was cornered off and turned into a potter's field. And if you're like me and had no idea what the hell a potter's field is, let me fill you in. A potter's field is essentially a burial site for unknown or unclaimed bodies. Generally, when someone doesn't have a buttload of cash when they die, they're typically laid to rest in a potter's field setting, which can have anywhere from small single-person graves to sometimes they'll even have mass burials in certain areas. Think of it like the body farm in Knoxville that I had mentioned, but this is the final resting spot for the vast majority of these people, and there's no forensic research that goes into what happens to them post-mortem. In 1879, it was established as Holt Cemetery. Today, there are some concrete slabs in place, some grave markings for the dearly departed, and some kind of makeshift, but to the best of someone's ability, they want to have something to signify that the person who is buried in that spot was dearly loved and missed. Today, there's roughly 2,391 bodies out at Holt Cemetery, which includes various jazz and blues musicians such as Jesse Hill, who is mostly known for his hit such as Whip It On Me and Ooh Pa Padoo, which was extremely popular with the Mardi Gras locals. He passed away at the age of 63 in 1996, and his body is at the Holt Cemetery to this day. Now, back on June 24th of 1973, during a Pride celebration, a prominent gay bar by the name of the Upstairs Lounge was set ablaze after someone had set fire to the staircase between the first and second floors of the establishment and ultimately claimed the lives of 32 people and injured 15 more. The suspect, Roger Dale Nunez, was never charged in the incident, but all signs were pointing to him as the prime candidate for arson. I'm not trying to brush over this horrific event, but 4 people, including a man by the name of Ferris LeBlanc, have since been buried out at Holt Cemetery in a mass grave after the fact. But why bring this up? Well, not 4 miles north of Holt Cemetery is Lake Pontchartrain. Trust me, I know, I probably fucked up the pronunciation of that. But 1/3 of a mile to the east is Big Lake. Pretty sure I nailed the pronunciation of that one. Hell, just 15 miles to the east is Lake Borgne, and that goes out to the Gulf of Mexico. Needless to say, Holt Cemetery, as well as most of New Orleans, is very, very close to massive bodies of water. And when it floods, things happen to the ground. Now, this potter's field was available to people of lower income, as most cemeteries in Louisiana are above ground in either vaults, chest tombs, crypts, or mausoleums. But that's if you have the money to have a structure built. Or you can get donations to be buried elsewhere. The main reason they have these above-ground structures so prominent in Louisiana is because of all of the flooding. Back in 2005, 1,833 people died as a result of the flooding from Hurricane Katrina. Most of the victims lived in impoverished communities and less than sufficient means of being buried above ground. Whether they were cremated or buried in a potter's field like Holt Cemetery would only be an option of whether or not they could afford it. Many people lost their lives, and many of the bodies have yet to be recovered. But back in 2005, with New Orleans being hit so hard with Hurricane Katrina, people started taking notice of some things that were happening with not only the Holt Cemetery, but other cemeteries that maybe they didn't notice beforehand. Some of the bodies that were buried in these shallow grave sites had started coming back up to the Earth's surface. But this incident wouldn't happen until a decade later, in 2015. Now, the more that go into this case, the more you're going to be hearing about actual posts, word for word, about what people were saying, and there are so many damn sources out there, including Paper, Vice, BuzzFeed, news articles, Facebook, as well as a very well-depicted timeline of events by wildhunt.org, and of course, court documents. But to say that this is a wild ride would be honestly the very least you could say about it. It's a very internet-heavy compilation of what transpired over these days, weeks, and months, but Well, here we go. Now I'm going to bring up the social media site of Tumblr. Are you familiar with Tumblr? I am. I used to be, and actually I've met some very incredible people from Tumblr, and some that I still have yet to meet. But they used to be very popular until they were bought by Yahoo and made the decision in 2018 to start banning pornographic material. And trust me when I say that it hit them significantly. And tons of Tumblr users started to boycott the company because they started banning all pornography, even if it was art-based. But there was a lot of porn on there. Anyways, in December of 2015, a Tumblr user by the name of Pastel Prouvier made a call-out post. Now, what is a call-out post, you may ask? Well, it's really when you call out somebody for doing something fucked up on the internet, or even in real life, and it's kind of a signal boost to get people aware of another person's shitty antics. The post read in its entirety. PSA. Tumblr user Little Fucking Monster is stealing human bones from cemeteries in Louisiana. Don't let them get away with this, and spread the word /signal boost. Now, a user by the name of the Caps Lock Brony had reblogged it saying, quote, I don't know about this, man. There's nothing to back up this claim at all. I don't even know if you know anything about this user. You could just be a dick trying to turn people against them. End quote. Well, luckily for the Caps Lock Brony, Pastel Prouvier had receipts, and that came in the form of a Facebook post by a person by the name of Ender Darling. That post, in its entirety, is a full admission as of what was happening, which led to the events that I'm covering in this case. That post read, quote, Content warning. Graves, bone hunting. Comment if there are added warnings needed. About 20 minutes from my house in Louisiana is what we call the poor man's graveyard. Most graveyards around here are full of above-ground graves because we live in a fishbowl. But there happens to be a graveyard where it's all in-ground graves for those of us who are too poor to afford above-ground burial. When it rains, of course bones wash up. The older the grave, the more you can find. You can literally walk around and see femurs, teeth, jaws, skull caps, etc., etc. This is where I go to find my human bones for curse work and general spells that require bone. I find human bones are easier to work with for me rather than animal bone. I can relate and work with the energy they carry, if that makes any sense. Anyways, I wanted to see if I started selling, basically covering shipping to wherever you happen to be, if people would be interested. I know human bones aren't easy to come by, and I usually have leftovers. I only go once a month, or when it rains here. End quote. Now, when it comes to Ender's response on their Facebook page, one friend had said, I'm absolutely interested, but you need to be careful with the state and federal laws. Ender had replied, Oh, I know. I looked it up and it's all good. I wouldn't even be offering if there was any chance someone would get into trouble. Me, LOL. Another friend had said, Yes, I would definitely be interested. In which Ender replied, You're in New York, right? Can you research your state laws on this? In Louisiana, bone trade isn't illegal, but I know that New York, Georgia, and Tennessee have stricter laws. So to me, it seems that maybe Ender Darling hasn't really done a whole lot of their own research on this one, where they're actually petitioning the people that they're wanting to send bones to for their state and local laws to make sure that nobody gets in trouble. Yeah. Now, alright, call me a dick, I don't care. But Ender Darling is not their real name. I do have the person's actual name, which I found the legal documents from, but out of respect to their real identity, I'm not going to dead name them out of respect to their identity, but you can find that information after a quick 2-second search. Just don't go attacking them. Also, I know that it sounds super hypocritical that I'm going to protect this person's identity even though they were picking up bones from a graveyard and trying to sell them online, albeit at shipping cost, which I don't know if they actually sold them for that much. But my philosophy is that although they were pretty cavalier with their bone acquisition of unknown bodies, then selling them online, I'm not going to stoop to their level and show the kind of disrespect that they showed the bodies of their little bone trade. So yes, from here on out, I'll refer to Ender Darling strictly as they or Ender Darling themselves. Either way, my personal belief on this person is, well, fuck 'em. But Ender describes themselves, and I quote, as, "I'm Ender, 24, queer trans non-binary, primal witchy creature, little fucking monster, angry floofball. I have a fond love for bondage, rope, other queer cuties, kitties, puppies, leather, boots, brandings, cutting, bruises, baseball bats, and my teddy bear, Izzy Darling. Not safe for work. If you aren't 18 plus, you probably shouldn't follow my blog. Trigger warnings include blood, sex, gore, extreme body modification, BDSM, bruises, and probably more than that. This is off the top of my head." Now that was taken from a Tumblr user bio that has now since been deleted. And I'm also not going to kink shame them. If you're into whatever you're into, that's completely fine by me as long as you aren't hurting other people. I don't kink shame. But something about the fact that they seem very open and very into the macabre, the morbid, all of these things, yet they will go and take human bones from a graveyard of some unfortunate souls whose bodies have washed up in the rain, the floods, the hurricanes. Something about taking those bones from a final resting site just seems extremely fucking tone deaf. But I digress. That is my opinion, and mine alone. But before we get into more of this episode, gonna take a very small break, give my own cat some treats, and I'll be right back. And welcome back. Let's keep talking about this horrible person. Alright. So the internet. Internet is very different. You may have an idea about maybe what it's like to be a podcaster. Well, to be honest, the online persona that I put out there is a lot more interesting than my life actually is. I am actually usually napping, working, sitting at my computer playing video games, or hanging out with my cat. But ever since the internet first started up, people like to take on these internet personas. Whether or not you're a goth kid, or if you are Billy Badass that lives in the middle of Nebraska. You can practically find any clique or forum or website that will help you try to match your real life with your online persona. I am still waiting to this day for the Nigerian prince that emailed me back in 1999 to send me my riches after I had to send him $20 cash. But Ender Darling described themselves as being a witch who is into black magic and like to do spells using human bones. To put it frankly, Ender Darling is just as much a witch as I was an amateur skateboarder back in 2003 after I got some free product from a skateboarding company because I gave them a lot of online attention. Or about as much as I cosplay that I'm a podcaster. Yeah. But the whole area in which this entire ordeal kind of spawned from was a private Facebook group called the Queer Witch Collective, in which they described themselves as, "We are a collective of queer witches diverse in age, nationality, gender, race, class, ability, and more. We strive for a better community for everyone. We must acknowledge how privileges and oppressions intersect across these labels. We are committing to forming an anti-oppressive/ethical space. As such, we actively combat forms of oppression, including, but not limited to, racism, ableism, sexism, cissexism, classism, colorism, casteism, etc." So we have a group of people on Facebook in a private group that are committed to, honestly, some really good causes. However, this whole incident really tore the witch community apart, as when this started going viral online, it started picking up news attention. And with the news attention, this private little group was now becoming more and more famous by the day. But of course, when you start getting more news attention, you actually start getting some more legal attention as well. The Attorney General's office launched an investigation in December after Darling had reported of collecting washed-up bones from the poor man's graveyard. Investigators believe the reference was to the Holt Cemetery, the historic Potter's Field on City Park Avenue, based on a part of photographs Darling later shared privately with prospective customers. Now, the thing about Holt Cemetery that I think is truly something that's a very good thing to have is an organization called Save Our Cemeteries, which the president of that is Adam Stevenson. Adam had said in an interview with NOLA.com that, quote, "I can't speak to the black market trade in human bones, but I do know that vandalism, regrettably, is an issue that we deal with, and a lot of that vandalism involves the exposure of human remains. We're talking about taking Uncle Joe's femur, and it's an obscenity." With more and more news attention coming towards the Queer Witch Collective, they ended up banishing every single member of the group and only let the moderators stay. The reason why they kicked everybody out of the group was as follows, quote, "Hey witches, it's come to our attention that people in this group were leaking information, outing members as witches, trans, survivors, and or lurking the group. To solve this, we removed all the group members except for the mod team. Feel free to re-add yourself. We will screen and re-add members ASAP." Again, this is 2015, where Discord really wasn't a big thing, but you get the point. But heading back to the original Tumblr post, let's just say that Little Fucking Monster, or Ender Darling, was getting a lot more attention than the Queer Witch Collective themselves. And with that also comes the memes. So here are some posts from people referencing Little Fucking Monster. One person said, "They should call the person who apprehends the grave robber Sherlock Bones." Another person said, "Today is a good day because I ate a quarter of my pie, all that was left, with only my bare hands. Directly upon waking up, I got a 94% on a reading test. There's drama on Tumblr about a user literally stealing human bones." Another person said, "Little Fucking Monster. They stole them. They stole the fizzy lifting bones." And one that really kind of spoke out to me was, if you remember, the Queer Witch Collective, they're against ableism, sexism, racism, everything else. One thing to keep in mind is that a lot of the people who were buried out at the Holt Cemetery were poor black people. So this user, which I can only imagine is from New Orleans, said, "Oh hey, this is going on around me." So yeah, earlier that Little Fucking Monster person was posting on Facebook asking if people wanted human bones for rituals that washed up during floodings. I appreciate the indignation, but while they are definitely graves of poorer people, it's not just a black cemetery. Also, they're not the first. Just this year, New Orleans passed more rules for cemetery tour guides because unofficial tour guides would just bust into people's graves and hand out bones to tourists like, what the fuck? We got dead people parts everywhere and they weren't looking to make a profit, but still disrespectful. I just hope they get caught and they will have to pay a huge fine, and then maybe more potholes will get fixed on my road. And I think there's something to say about that. A lot of the people who were buried out there were poor African American people. And if you're going to tout being somebody who is accepting of race and nationality and creed and sexuality and sexual identity, you can't be taking these people's bones. I like creepy shit. I already mentioned that in this episode. But if I'm gonna have human bones, I would like to know, one, where did they come from and is there a warrant out for your arrest? And two, would I really want somebody to do that to me? Just wait for my bones to wash up after a rainstorm and then just sell it across the country? I mean, we did cover the case of Elmer McCurdy and his traveling corpse, but this is something much more vile, to say the very least. It seems a little hypocritical to me. So another person on Tumblr said, if I was a ghost and I found out someone on this shitty website stole my bones, I'd haunt their ass so hard. And the memes kept coming. Someone else had said, I think after becoming a late 2015 meme, Little Fucking Monster is going to have a bone to pick with some people. Either way, the memes just kept on coming. Yet when it came to the responses that Ender Darling received, one person in the Witch Collective had said that, quote, I am really sad that someone is acting like this is grave desecration when it's literally taking what the earth washes up. Yeah, but taking what the earth is washing up are people's bones from their final resting sites. And after not too long, Ender Darling finally broke their silence. This is somewhat lengthy, but it is a ride of Ender Darling's justification as what they were doing with these bones. Christ, I don't even know what music to put to this. Let's be sarcastic and put something really sad in here. Okay, so buckle up. Here it comes. Long story short, a post that was posted in a Queer Witch Collective where sell is understood to mean cover shipping, especially when I made that clear, and curse is understood to mean any spell you cast on another physical person, was screenshot, just my post, not the massive thread that fucking followed, and removed from the group where it had context and posted. What has followed has been extremely racist, especially towards those who still practice indigenous craft. Physical harm has been threatened, including towards my child. Y'all fuckers cool it down on that front before you really start saying shit you can't back up, because I swear if any of you actually have the guts to try something, my automatic response when it comes to my child is to put your teeth in my altar. Try me. Here's what happened. You can either understand there's an entire part of this story you aren't getting, or you can continue thinking your outrage is righteous and I'm actually knee-deep in bodies. I don't care. There are a few in-ground cemeteries around where I live. For some reason, people think I'm going to Holt, which I'm not, and I'm not sure how you all got that cemetery. But anyways, bones eventually wash up, because that's what happens in in-ground cemeteries, especially the ones where it rains a lot and the groundskeepers aren't doing their job. I was walking into the graveyard like I usually do once a week, because it's fucking in disrepair and I try to do what I can with weeding and offerings, and I witnessed an old man digging up with a shovel and a backhoe, tearing into some old plots. You fucks want to threaten me, yet don't actually sit to rationally think about how in-ground cemeteries actually continue to be able to have bodies buried in there. I made a quick decision when I watched a few bones tumble from the dirt into the street, and I picked them up and went through the graveyard, and I picked up ones I saw in my path, knowing that they were either going to be crushed or swept away. And I'm sorry, but for me, a spiritual person who works with death, seeing a fucking machine tear into graves like that seemed a lot less respectful to the dead you are all so concerned about than me picking them up and saving them. I did not dig up anything. What the post fails to show is how many times I explained what I was doing. I'm not sure how people even got that. Anywho, I made a choice in what I thought was a safe space for people of color witches, especially people of color witches who practice indigenous, dark, and otherwise not Wiccan/fluffy magic, to post something offering the little bits of bone I had sitting on my altar to other people of color witches who might use human bones in their practice. Somehow, this blew up into me digging up fucking bodies. I'm not. I repeat, I'm not digging up bodies or bones. I've also been heavily shamed for my indigenous practices. Here's the thing, you bunch of fucks. Magic is dark. Magic is bloody. Magic is scary. Magic isn't just fucking white light fairy dust bowls of honey on your damn altar. You all can stop touting the threefold rule or Wiccan Reed or karma thing. That shit applies to only those who believe in it. Full fucking stop. I am not Wiccan. I am not fluffy. I work with death and bones, curses and hexes, the dark and the things not for the faint of heart. You ain't about to shame me for it. Fucking y'all want to pretend that I'm not in New Orleans, where I have watched black voodoo priests break into crypts and steal random full bodies. Y'all want to sit there and pretend that graveyard keepers aren't actually selling bodies or bones to hospitals and colleges? Yeah, they have legal means to do so, but if you honestly think that people aren't paid to bury empty coffins, you're way more naive than I need to point out. Y'all want to be mad at the kid that saved some bones from being crushed because fuck getting the actual story. So let's go with a screenshot that in no way shows the entire story. Sure. Y'all want to pretend that occult leaders, cough, the leader of the New Orleans chapter of the OTO, cough, aren't actually breaking into graves to steal skulls and get body parts to practice their necromancy? Hint, I'm not a necromancer, that's not what I'm doing, so can that pile of horseshit, please. Instead of being angry at the frat parties that actually break into cemeteries and cause fucking damage for stupid college parties, you want to be angry at the kid who literally picked up bones from the ground to save them from getting swept away. The kid who continues to care for the cemeteries they visit, the kid who offers offerings and prayer whenever anything is taken. Cool. Sounds legit. But yeah, I'm knee-deep in bodies with a shovel, eating and selling bones. Sure, whatever. I've only gotten a bit of hate mail, which reads to me as people don't actually care, they just want something to be pissed about. If you feel the need to send me hate mail, please be aware that I'm not actually going to read it. I'm going to delete it. Thanks. End quote. Now, the place where I found this, which a user by the name of Looks Kinda Dead Inside had said, quote, "At fucking heathen. Okay, since no one will tell you this, then I will. Put them back. They aren't yours, point blank. If you care about the dead so much, bury them and say a little prayer. You thought you were helping people of color witches. You're not helping anyone by stealing human remains, no matter how they came into your possession. They don't belong to you, so put them back." And honestly, I completely fucking agree with them. But that person wasn't alone in criticizing Ender Darling for what they were doing. One person had questioned, "Are you making any sort of offering or payment at the graveyard to the dead or the spirits of the land?" And Ender Darling said, "I bring drink and honey and flowers." Now, I'm sure by this time you are debating whether or not it's ethical to acquire human bones or not. But not only is it ethical, is it against the law? Well, according to theboneroom.com, it says that, quote, "human bone and laws information." In short, it is perfectly legal to possess and sell human bones in the United States. There are a few exceptions to this. A few states have banned import and export, and of course, archaeological resource protected by the Native American Graves Protection and Reparation Act. The Bone Room cannot ship any real bones to Georgia, Tennessee, and Louisiana. International shipping restrictions may apply. Now, how much does a skull go for? Well, on theboneroom.com, you can grab yourself a brain bucket from India, being a male, for $1,900. You can also grab a male geriatric skull for $1,800. And then they do have a variety of other male skulls, but yet it seems that all of these are from India. Don't ask me why, I do not know. But if you want a teenage skull with dental cutaways, that's going to cost you $3,000. Or if you want a fetal child skull, that'll cost you $2,000. Either way, it seems that at the time, before this whole case kind of spearheaded an investigation by the Attorney General of Louisiana, it was perfectly legal to import and export human remains. Although that wouldn't be the case for long, because on the 18th of December of 2015, Louisiana Assistant Attorney General Ryan Seidman said that he has ordered an investigation into the possible removal of human remains from Holt Cemetery in Louisiana. So on January 22nd of 2016, the police started a little surveillance crew to start keeping an eye on Ender Darling's home. After steady surveillance and watching people come in and out of the house, they managed to execute a search warrant on their home, and they managed to seize a laptop, cell phone, and at least 11 bones and 4 teeth that were placed on an altar inside of the home. When the authorities investigated the cell phone and the laptop, they found messages stemming all the way back from November 16th of 2015, in which Ender Darling was freely giving out their home address for people to come over and pick up some of these bones. Court documents also support the fact that Ender was taking donations for their work on trying to acquire these, as they may have been used in black magic rituals. Either way, to me, this really sounds like maybe Ender Darling was super into American Horror Story Coven. I honestly don't know. I couldn't tell you. But in an interview that Ender Darling had conducted with the New Orleans Advocate, they stated that, quote, "They were coming in, seriously expecting to find bodies and human organs and have me and my roommates arrested for black marketing human remains. You should have seen their faces when they walked into the house and found a bunch of sleeping hippies." Regarding the bones, Ender had said, quote, "I had them on an altar. It was just a bunch of little shards of bones and pieces of teeth that I picked up off the ground, and I said to the agents, 'Here you go. There's probably human bones in there, but I know better than to give you that answer.'" End quote. So Ender basically just said that the raid was a waste of time and they really had nothing to go off of. Ender and their roommates were given a summons for marijuana possession and then decided to move away. Can you imagine which state they wanted to move to? I'll give you a second just to think about that. If you guessed Florida, then congratulations, you just won this game. Ender Darling packs up their stuff and heads off to the great sunshiny, fucking whatever you wanna call it, state of Florida. Don't ask me why I have this irrational fear or phobia of Florida, but seriously, nothing good ever comes out of that goddamn state. I know that I have listeners and friends and people and even family members who live in Florida, but seriously, Florida, what the fuck? But I'm gonna take another quick break, and I'll be right back with the final part of this episode. And I'm back. Let's finish this up. So with Ender Darling thinking that they have subverted the law, the authority, and everything else, nothing happens to Ender for many, many months. However, on June 17th of 2016, in response to public outcry, the Louisiana Human Remains Protection and Control Act was signed into law. How I mentioned before how Georgia and Tennessee were the only states to have any kind of law in place when it comes to the import or export of human remains, this is the key piece of legislation that also made it illegal for Louisiana as well. The legislation states that this legislature hereby finds that Louisiana has never permitted, recognized, or sanctioned ownership rights in human remains, that such materials are explicably exempt from property concepts under both common and civil law. The legislature further finds that the trade in or commodification of human remains fosters the looting and desecration of cemeteries and other sacred sites. The legislature further finds that the existing state laws do not adequately protect against the illicit trade in human remains, and that such trade needs to be stemmed in order to minimize looting and desecration of cemeteries. the legislature also finds and declares that there is a need for central state entity to manage the enforcement of human remains laws, and that because the Attorney General is already the statutory counsel to the Louisiana Cemetery Board, as well as being charged with civil enforcement of the Louisiana Unmarked Human Burial Sites Preservation Act and the Louisiana Historic Cemetery Preservation Act, the Attorney General is uniquely qualified to enforce and police all illicit transactions and commodifications of human remains contemplated by this chapter. I know, it's a lot of legal jargon, but still, they enacted a law, and the law itself stiffens penalties for removing human remains from cemeteries. A first offense violation is punishable by a fine of up to $5,000 or a year in prison, and a second offense is punishable for up to 2 years in prison and a fine up to $10,000. Yet, when it comes to laws like this, considering the law was signed in after they raided Ender Darling's home, they were not eligible to be held to these same standards. But at least for all the other people who decided to go out to cemeteries just to find some bones, they would be facing some very, very stiff consequences. Kind of a case of too little, too late, but either way, Ender Darling thought that they were in the clear, and that was not the case. Because although modern science has been a lifesaver in multiple ways, more than one, it does take a little bit of time. The bones that they had gotten from Ender's house were being analyzed to see if they were of human descent. Unfortunately for Ender, they were. On the 15th of July of 2016, the forensic lab confirmed that the bones that were removed from Ender Darling's house just so happened to be human. So they issued a warrant for Ender Darling's arrest, in which they found Ender Darling in Tampa, Florida, and then on the 27th of July of 2016, Ender was then transferred to the Orleans Justice Center. And their bail was set at $8,500. When Ender appeared in court on July 29th of 2016, they were slapped with a charge of burglary as well as the aforementioned possession of marijuana. For that, Ender actually pled guilty to everything. And even though the Ender Darling said that they had not taken the bones from the Holt Cemetery, a quote from the judge had said, quote, "Are you pleading guilty to burglary of Holt Cemetery because you are in fact guilty of that charge?" To which Ender had replied, "Yes, ma'am." For the sentencing, Ender Darling would be given a 5-year suspended sentence, which means that Ender Darling will be on probation, and then given 15 days for the marijuana possession with credit for time served. Since then, Ender Darling has not really made any public appearances, whether it be online or in person. I really don't want to track them down anyways. I think that they learned the severity of their crime, which I do believe that taking human bones and selling them, although may be legal, except in those 3 states, but I do believe that there's an ethical element to that I'd really rather not people kind of just fuck with people's bones. As I mentioned, I don't care what happens with my body. Whether you do or not, I can guarantee that all of us will be too dead to really give a shit. But to find that maybe one of your loved ones has been dug up or even just washed ashore because you live in a proverbial fucking fishbowl, I don't think that many people would want their remains to be used for some black magic ritual at the behest of a Tumblr witch who really just watched way too many episodes of American Horror Story Coven and thinks that they can do black magic. Not saying it doesn't exist, but I really doubt that this person was, I don't know, any kind of actual witch. Just like to smoke pot with their friends and would pick up human remains and sell them online for shipping costs. It's ethically bad. Don't fuck with people's bones. But anyways, that's gonna do it for this episode. I hope you enjoyed it, and it honestly felt good to finally do and such where I'm not diving into a murder of an innocent victim which a special shout out to my therapist for wanting to cover something a little more lighthearted yet still very dark. But anyways, if you enjoyed the show, thank you for listening. Whether you're listening on YouTube or you're listening on the podcast player of your choice, I truly appreciate you being here with me. And like I mentioned before the episode, I'm going to have the reviews after the episode is finished, so stay tuned for that. But if you think that the show is maybe worth $1 or $2, feel free to head over to the Patreon, where you can donate just $1 an episode, or you can become an executive producer just like all of these fine people. So thank you to Stephanie Jacobson, Stephanie Marie, Bex, Fatina Louviere, Mindy Baker, That Dead Body Show, Caitlin Prophet, Casey Jones, Jason W., Michelle Davis, Danielle Kuska, Strictly Homicide Podcast, the Bama Brew Review Podcast, Aaron Albertson, Michelle Pierce, Martha Pierce, Alex Aguirre, Justin Reebsum, McKenna Johnson, Ariel Safir, Tracy Ford, Stacy Jenks, Dan Sheridan, Benjamin Welch, Cassandra Colon, Ashley Collier, Charkley Daniels, Erica Summers, Ashley Black, and tech support, Danielle Longamore, Nature vs. Narcissism, Big Daddy Thick Dick, Sarah Thompson, and my wonderful, beautiful sister, Sarah Thornton. If you want to follow me on all the social media garbage, you can follow the show at Murder and Such on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, or you can follow me on Instagram, Snapchat, and the PlayStation Network at Huntor27. But I thank you again for listening to this episode. Be sure to leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, and if you do leave a written review, I'm going to talk about it on the end of the show. But if not, thank you for listening, and my name is Hunter, reminding you to wash your filthy goddamn hands, wear a mask, get vaccinated when you can, and until next time, I will talk to you soon. Take care. Okay, now for the reviews. Honestly, thank you guys. You are, between Patreon and the support and the positive affirmations I get for doing this show, you guys truly mean so very, very fucking much to me. I got some incredible reviews since the last episode, so I'm gonna go over them, and I kind of got this idea from listening to a friend of mine. His name is Justin Rimmel, and he does a podcast called Mysterious Circumstances, which you should definitely go check out. He's an awesome guy. We may not agree on everything, but he's a good dude. So Celissa C. left me a review with 5 stars that said, "Love, love, love. Murder and Such is definitely my favorite crime podcast. Hunter gets involved with his findings. The layout is easy to imagine and follow, and my favorite part is that his voice is made for this. I tried listening to other crime podcasts and couldn't because they don't have the type of voice. 5 stars for me," followed by 5 emoji stars. No, thank you. Honestly, I hate my voice, and I don't really know why I hate it, but I just do. A lot of podcasters hate the sound of their own voice, but for some reason you guys like listening to it, so no, thank you for listening and leaving that awesome review for me. I appreciate you. So I got another one from Mudslinger19, and they left a 2-star review that said, "Awesome podcast. Fellow Iowan from Nashua, Iowa, 10 miles from Hunter's hometown," which is true. "Love the podcast. You're doing an awesome job and always left me wanting more episode releases. I wish I could support you monetarily, but currently can't due to strict finances. Keep up the great work, and I hope this 5-star rating helps you out just the slightest." Well, honestly, I never require or need people to donate to the show. So if you even just listen on a free podcast app, that's completely fine with me. The people who do donate, they don't even need to, but whatever compels them to, that is truly, I don't know, that's incredible. Also, thank you for the 5-star review by leaving 2 stars. I'm just going to assume that you accidentally thumbed the wrong star, which is completely fine. Your words mean more than the 5 stars, actually. But I did get another one that was 3 stars from ArchCon Nova that said, way too much droning at the beginning of the episode. Thanks, everyone. Apologies for droning on, then continues to rethank the same people. Just get on with the episode. I did do that quite a bit with the last episode. When I had Jara Wilson reach out to me and thank me for covering the episode that involved her daughter, I did drone on for quite a bit, but I think a lot of people, they can look past that, and a 3-star review, I understand that. Some people just want the crime and no other shit, but I do see Murder and Such as a creative outlet, and I think that having that human element and letting you guys know that I am vulnerable is, I'm not going to say like humble, but it's the fact that you guys humble me on a daily, weekly, monthly, yearly basis. It just reminds me that I'm not alone and you guys appreciate the work that I do. So I might drone on more in more episodes, but I mean, you can always, usually it's always about 7 minutes of a monologue, and then I get into the actual case. But I always want to kind of put those little monologues out there because I want you to understand why I want to cover that episode. So thank you for the 3-star review, ArchCon Nova, but I hope you continue to listen. So I got another one from Nico that said, Nico Moon 007 loves this. 5 stars, and it went on to say, I love the newer podcast, the more serious ones, but with your witty ways of insulting the murderers, LOL, I'm a true fan of this podcast and will let all my peeps know this is a great listen. Keep up the great and hard work. We all appreciate you. No, Nico, thank you for your feedback. Whether you like this show or you begrudgingly listen to it because you hate me, I honestly, anybody who's listening to this show, I appreciate you. So Nico, thank you for the incredible 5-star review. So I've got another one from Macy D. West that said, new/old listener. And they went on to say that I found this podcast with the help of my dear friend McKenna. That would be McKenna Johnson. She turned me on to it when I needed something new and exciting to listen to. This podcast has been such a wonderful addition to my own library. I work in a very stressful environment, and it's nice to be able to zone out sometimes and listen to all the details of whichever case Hunter is talking about. I appreciate the effort he has put into when researching the cases. I've listened to other podcasts that have incorrect info or just don't seem to care about the topic. I'm actually using episode 81 and probably 51 to complete an assignment for my Comp and Ret 1301 class. We have to write a podcast review, and Murder and Such was the first one to pop into my head when I started brainstorming ideas. So, thank you for being an awesome host and creating this A1 podcast for our listening pleasure. I wouldn't call my podcast listening pleasure. That is something that just doesn't sit right with me. But honestly, I hope that your course goes okay, and you can use any parts of any of the episodes I do when you're writing something about a case that you maybe want to write your own thing about. All of the information that I have is widely available on the internet. Some of them I've had to dive a little bit deeper, but I do put a lot of effort into this show, and I do it because I believe that people like the info, and they like I'm not even going to say I like the realism that I put with it. I definitely think that there's a lot of podcasts that don't give a shit about the victims and just want to talk about the murderers, or they want to not really idolize them, but put a spotlight more on the killers than like on the memories of the people that they've taken away. So, I mean, if this helps you through your stressful work environment, I'm honored that you want to listen to me to help you get through it. And I do wish that I did more episodes, but there's a lot of research that goes into these things, and for my own mental health's sake, I've got to kind of pump the brakes every now and again. But Macy, I hope that your comp and rec class goes well. I hope your paper and your assignment goes well. And if there's anything I can do to help you out, feel free to reach out to me. I have no qualms with that whatsoever. But thank you again for your 5-star review, and thank you for being a friend. So I've got another one from Kit Kat Cook that says, fantastic research, great delivery, and really good reporting in a professional narrative. I am not a professional by any stretch of the imagination. If you are a long-time listener of the show, you would know that was one of the intro things. But no, thank you for your kind words, Kit Kat Cook. Thank you for the 5 stars, and thank you for stopping by and brightening my day a little bit more. I appreciate you. Now this last one kind of hit me pretty hard. This one I'm gonna butcher the screen name for this, but Pyruvates88 left me one on Sunday from when I'm recording this, but said truly one of the best in the genre with 5 stars. Here's the review. I've been listening to this podcast for a long time. When I first began listening, the show was a conversational, somewhat comedic, fun format that I found entertaining. Hunter's first co-host, Brittany, left the show, and he found a great replacement, being Haley. And the show really seemed to grow and find its identity. When his second co-host decided to leave the show, I was initially super disappointed, and it seemed the future of the show was in doubt. But Hunter responded, and the show did a complete 180. Rather than find a new co-host, Hunter is now the solo host, and the tone of the show has completely changed. His monologues are somber, thoroughly researched, and shockingly good. He tells each story in a chilling way that effectively draws attention to bigger picture systemic issues. Some will undoubtedly take issue with Hunter's political philosophies. I myself am somewhat conservative, but recognize that the issues Hunter addresses are related to basic principles of human respect, regardless of race, gender, sex, etc. These should not be a political issue, but rather basic human truths. It is sad that such hate and evil has become synonymous with the right-wing political. Anywho, awesome podcast. Hunter deserves a lot of credit and should be proud of the product that he puts out. I listen to just about every true crime podcast, and this is one of my favorites. My only complaint would be a more frequent and regular release schedule. Thank you. That, okay, like I'm not gonna mince words. Like, I do get political on this show. But honestly, hearing from somebody who may not agree with me on everything can look through maybe some of the political ideologies that I hold. I'm not a Democrat. I am not Republican. I am a fucking 33-year-old Satanist, fucking whatever you want to call me, that now has a microchip thanks to Bill Gates. I'm human. And all of you who listen, and all of us that listen to true crime, are also human. And I think that when I discuss topics such as immigration and race relations, and I even go on a whole fucking TikTok thing and talk about Trump in the beginning, like, I show my ass, but I also show my heart on my sleeve. I am very vulnerable, and I have had some reviews that have absolutely crushed me. And I still do it because of you guys. I could do this for the Patreon money, the ad revenue money, and guess what? I've been doing this for 3 years, and out of the 3 years I've been doing this, only a year and a half has had any kind of monetary value with it. And I always try to put money back into the show, whether it's getting better music for background music, or trying to find audio clips, or even paying money to get research notes from clerks of court from around the goddamn nation. I do it because I find these interesting, and I do the monologues because I want you to understand my reasoning of why I want to do an episode. And I do it because you guys enjoy it and you listen. And for a dude who spent the prior 30 years of his life essentially unknown to the general public and just kind of a fucking asshole before I started doing my mental health therapy, I have this platform that I want to use in a good way. I could sit there on Twitter and fucking lambast people left, right, and center like some podcasts do. But that's not me. I like being vulnerable. I like putting my words and thoughts and everything into this show to let you guys know that I'm a basic, boring bitch of a human. But this basic, boring bitch of a human feels good that what I'm creating is something that you guys enjoy. And the victims in these cases are not going to disappear. That's why I do this show. Because of you and for those who may have been forgotten. So honestly, that's one of the best reviews I've ever had. And your words, I'm sorry, I'm still going to fucking butcher your name, Pyruvates 88, your words mean more to me than you could ever fucking imagine. So thank you for your kindness. Thank you for the feedback. And thank you guys for listening. If it wasn't for you, I don't know where I'd be right now. The positive affirmations that I receive on a daily, weekly, monthly, yearly basis is astounding. And if this show ever takes off, like, there's not one person who's ever messaged me years after I started this podcast that I don't remember. And I never want to be that kind of person who doesn't remember every single person who has gotten me to the point where I am right now. If there's comments on the YouTube channel, I go there and I reply to them. If there's somebody who stops by and sends a message, I try my best to reply to them. Sometimes I just have to shut my fucking phone off just to clear my damn head and, do my actual job as well. But you guys are the ones who push me to be better. And I've fucked up. I've fucked up really bad on some episodes. But you are the ones who keep me grounded, who keep me humble, and let me know that I'm just not some dude out there talking into the ether trying to, let's talk about a crime. Like, you are the ones who truly, you're the people on this floating rock going through fucking space with me. And I couldn't be more grateful for your existence and your kindness and your words. So, thank you. That's really all I can think of to say is thank you. Not only for listening, but thank you for being my friends. All right, that's all the reviews for right now. If you want to leave one, Apple Podcasts or iTunes, whatever they call it now. And if you drop a 5-star or a 1-star review, I'm going to read it because you guys are important to me. Even the backlash that I get for episodes that I've done is important to me, and it makes me want to be a better person. So, all right, enough of me sitting here and stroking my ego, or you guys stroking my ego. I'm going to end this episode, but thank you again for listening to episode 83, the one that has mostly been known as Bone Ghazi. But yes, the Holt Cemetery Incident. Wash your hands, wear a mask, get vaccinated when possible. I'm fully vaccinated now, as of yesterday. Anyways, I'll talk to you guys soon. I love you, and take care.